Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 19th episode of Phenomenal Woman Wednesday. I am your host, Dr. Saran Nataki. Thank you for joining. Welcome to Power 365 Phenomenal Woman Wednesdays. This podcast will address issues ranging from what is a phenomenal woman? Are you enough? Community service, paying it forward, the manifestation of dreams with words and action, the power in being a woman, the men who support phenomenal women, fashion, and much more. Stay tuned. Thank you for joining today. You are in for a really big treat. This is the first of a two-part interview. In this episode, I chat with Joan Williams about the phenomenal women in her life, their influences in her life, and the cultural dynamic of growing up Ghanaian in America. We touch on colorism and self-love. Enjoy. Welcome back to Phenomenal Woman Wednesday. So today I have a very special guest, Mrs. Joan Williams. And Joan Williams has been a near and dear friend of mine for over 20 years. And today she has agreed to sit down with me to discuss some really important issues surrounding culture and how she maintains balance in her life as a phenomenal woman. Thank you, Joan, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And girl, it's been close to 30 years. We're getting on the 30-year
Oh,
mark
is
of knowing
it?
each other.
I think I
Yes,
said that to
ma'am.
somebody else too. Like I think I said 20 years and it's really 30. So yeah, we're
It's been a while.
it
Let's just say
is.
that.
Yeah, the kids just figured out that I'm not the age I've been telling them. They said, "Well,
Oh,
mommy, if you are 32, how is it that Omar is 28? You can't have had him when you were 4." And I said, "Well, it's like a time machine, Twilight Zone. You just have to trust and believe."
right. Time just stops for us when we get
Yeah,
to a
right.
certain
It's a certain
point.
point.
It's
It's
just
just kind
like,
of stops and then it picks back up when
it's
you're ready,
right.
you know.
hmm Right.
But anyhow, so Joan is a phenomenal woman. Joan is a wife, a mother, a daughter. Joan has 3 wonderful children, all adult now. Oh, wow, you've entered into
Yes,
that very
crazy.
special phase of life where, well, given our current situation, you're not necessarily an empty nester right now, but you
Very
could
full.
be. You qualify, right?
That's right. I can check that box. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So Joan and I met when we were in college. And I think what is it? We had a class together, genetics. We had a genetics
Right.
course, and
Yeah.
I met Joan in genetics. And one day, I had a long break between classes, and Joan offered to. She said, "Hey, girl, let's just hang out." You remember that,
Yep.
Joan?
I do, like yesterday.
Yep.
Like I can still visually see that. And I think we talked for so long. Like it was kind of organic in a way,
It was.
just getting knowing each other and just talking. And I think you were pregnant at the time with your oldest child. Um, and I don't know, from that point on, history is written, I guess.
Yeah. Was I pregnant or I can't remember exactly,
Think,
but
yeah.
probably, maybe.
hmm
And but anyhow, but yeah, we talked for such a long time, and it was just like every day thereafter, I
yep.
used that break time with you, and we just became the best of friends. And
Mhm.
your mother, Kate, she had a daycare, and so when it came time for me to need childcare, you're like, my mom can watch him. And so,
Yep.
I took Joan up on that. I went to meet Kate, and she just loved my baby. Like she charged me $35 a week. I mean, really, $35
Yep.
a week. Didn't require me to bring food. So basically, she was just keeping them for free and like feeding them with the
Yeah.
$35 I would give. Like she just,
Yes. Yep. She always believed that when people were trying to do good for themselves, like make themselves better, especially when it comes to school, she's like, I'll help. in whatever way I can help, I will do it. And that's just been her from day one to this day. Like, she's that way.
Yeah, that's
Um,
beautiful.
yeah, she's, you know, my mom.
Yeah, no, basically, I just became a member of the family via this relationship
Yeah.
and her involvement with my son. And in fact, at one point, your mom said, "You know what? Just you go to school during the week, leave him
Right.
here, and you just come get him on the weekends."
Yep.
Wait a
Because
minute.
you know what? Because coming from, she's Ghanaian, and that's what we do. That's what they do. Like,
Mhm.
she is just that type. If she loves you, if she likes you, she's like, you do you. It's like the grandma, right?
Yeah.
She's kind of like a grandma, like, in that regard. You do you, and just come get him when you're ready. But we live in America, and that's not how we do things. So
Yeah, no, but it was so, I couldn't wrap my head around it, but I so appreciated how endearing that was. Very special, very endearing for her to even offer or see me in that way, to offer to keep my child for the week and then I would come back and, for me to come back and get him on the weekend. I mean, that was just an amazing offer. And to pay 30, like that, that deal was like,
the deal of the century.
yeah, the deal of the century. Childcare, $35 a week, and he eats, and he's taken care of,
Right.
and the spiritual family. And he would be going to all the games for all the kids, like all your siblings, when they would have their juniors games. When he would have his games, that he'd be there. Even at the time, Ritka was a little girl, but one day I went to drop him off, and Ritka answered the door. I think she was 7. And I was like, okay. She was like, no, it's fine. Come on, and bring him in here. And it felt right. I was like, well,
right.
she knows she's doing.
Right. Yeah, good trainer, right?
Yeah, it's like, wow. But anyhow, so that gives you a little insight into who Joan is in my life and how we came to be who we are today. Outside of that, being sorority sisters, and that came later down the line. So, so Joan, the first question I want to ask you today, so that I can get, my listeners, give them some insight into how phenomenal you are. What does it mean to be a phenomenal woman?
I think it's a perfect segue to the story you just told about my mom. I believe that a woman is phenomenal when she has an impact on the lives of others by just being herself in whatever capacity they're in. And the impact is long lasting. And also, I think a woman is phenomenal when she inspires others in whatever way they can. You have people who can inspire and reach audiences of millions of people, but most of us, we have our circles. And I think that when you're phenomenal and you have positive impacts on the lives of those around you, and you inspire them in positive ways, I think, to me at least, that's the definition of someone who is phenomenal, a phenomenal woman.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and like you said, your mom is a perfect example of a phenomenal woman. I've always admired how she's been able to raise all of you. So you have 4 siblings, and all of you are really ethical, great people that I would choose to be a friend of mine, not just like now I feel like you're my family, but like your family you don't choose, but I would choose you. Like I would choose you. So, yeah. So who have been the phenomenal women in your life? Obviously your mom.
Yes, obviously my mom, yes. But there've been other women who also are phenomenal. I think I tend to gravitate to people with like certain energies. So there's one woman, her name, she's Miss McKinney, and she's my husband's best friend's mother. And she is one of the most funniest people I know. She she's older. She's like around my mom's age, maybe a little bit older. But when I talk to her, I still talk to her. She lives in Philadelphia. I call her mom. She, just the insights of life that she gives are amazing. She's fabulous. She reminds me of my mother. You know, my mom too. She likes to, when she gets dressed, she you know, she gets dressed and she's fabulous. And Miss McKinney is that way too. I guess she's I would say like my American mom version. In that version. There you go, American version of my mom in that she loves herself. She will tell you. She will, if you right, she's gonna tell you. If you wrong, she's gonna tell you. And she does it as if we're best friends, like just the way that she talks. So I love that about her. I think that that's what makes her phenomenal. Just being grounded in who you are. You know, she's unapologetic about who she is and her thoughts, and she'll give them to you straight, regardless. It doesn't matter what it is. I love that about her, and I think she's been impactful to me in that way. She helps me ground myself in that, and I have phenomenal friends. My circle. I know a lot of people, but there are certain friends, yourself included, that have been phenomenal to me in their lives. I think we all have stories to tell, right? We all have something we've overcome or something that we've experienced that has made us stronger. And just being whoever you are and getting through those times is very impactful. Like I said, for me, a phenomenal woman is someone who impacts, and that's been impactful in my life. So taking those nuggets and taking how maybe you've gone through adversity and using that as a pillar when I'm going through adversity, you know, to say, if she can do it, I can do it, because times don't last long, those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you with that, because, you know, when you're, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just, just want to add this, you know, when you're talking about a phenomenal woman being someone who is basically a real woman, having something to offer. You know, if you don't go through any adversity and everything's perfect, you have no perspective. You have you've not learned really, in a practical sense, how to navigate adversity. And so when you have those tools and you're able to offer them to the people around you and those that are coming up behind you, your children, your nieces, your cousins, your sisters, you know, and sometimes we even you know, help out those that are a little ahead of us, right?
Of course. Yeah. I don't think there has to be levels. We can learn from children. You know, there could be
absolutely,
young women who are phenomenal, you know, in that as well. I don't think it has to be linear at all. I think it could be, you know, go either way for sure. Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you mentioned your mom and Miss McKinney and all of the other phenomenal women that, you know, are in your circle that you have, you know, observed being phenomenal, all the different stories, all the experiences, a very rich and fertile ground for growth. Have you adopted any of those characteristics?
Yes, for sure I have. Like my mom, for instance, she is the core of who I am. I mean, you know, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. You know, it was a family of 7. My dad worked the graveyard shift, and my mom, you know, she did the babysitting business here. I was very observant of her growing up in the house. I would see how she would, you know, juggle stuff. Like, all right, we got some meat and we got some spaghetti. All right, let's see who's gonna make something tonight. You know what I mean? Like, you know, just juggling stuff and just observing her, watching these kids, you know, afterwards, making sure we ate, making sure we did our homework, we're doing our homework. She just, you know, I was very observant of that. In the Ghanaian community, there's a word called someone who is like I like to call it inquisitive. They say nosy, and it's they say too known. So sometimes I'll be called like, Joan is always so too known, like meaning I'm just nosy. And I'm like, no, I'll ask questions, I will look, I will observe. So watching her through my childhood lens, I've soaked up so much from her.
Mm-hmm. I'm used to
even
my own kids. Too known.
right?
Yeah.
I've learned how to cook. I've learned how to dress because, like I said, my mom, she's vain. She's kind of a vain person, especially when she's all done up and stuff.
Proud of herself.
She's very proud of
Yes.
herself. She really is. And another part of my mom also, she's very humble. She'll be that person that's dressed to the nines at church, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then after church, she'll be the one there cleaning, mopping,
Mm-hmm.
In whatever she's wearing. Like, it didn't matter. Like, she will be the one to, the things that people don't want to do,
Mm-hmm.
she'll do, clean the toilets, all that kind of stuff. So I've learned how to be humble as well from her. I don't have to be at the top of anything. I can be in the background, and I'm okay with that, knowing that I'm supporting or I'm helping. So I definitely feel like I've adopted her because she's the core of who I am. And like I said earlier, with like say Miss McKinney, yourself, other friends, I've learned to draw upon experiences of say something that good or bad that has happened to help me go through whatever it is I may go through. So I think that's I've said enough on that.
No, that's awesome. I think when you just the examples that you present in terms of just being humble enough to be of service, not feeling that because you're so not feeling that it's not understanding that it's still your responsibility to humanity, despite what you might be wearing, to be able to help and to pull up those around you. That's a really wonderful trait. As a Ghanaian American, how would you describe the cultural dynamic of being Ghanaian but in America? Like, what does that look like to you?
Okay. Yeah. Kind of, it's loaded but not loaded question. Okay, so like being Ghanaian, in my house, we had my dad every weekend would be playing reggae, Ghanaian Highlife music. Like, music is a big thing, like at home, and it would just fill the house. And in their own their own tribes, even, because my mom and dad are from different tribes in Ghana.
Okay.
So my dad is of Ashanti and my mom is Ga. So the language is different. And they have their customs within those tribes. So we'll hear music from each side as well in the house and stuff, right? We're eating Ghanaian food at home. My mom spoke to us in the languages. So I know a few languages, Ghanaian languages. But if you ask me today, I can't speak them back to you, but I understand it to this day. So I'm very grateful that she introduced us. Like, my dad didn't speak to us. He spoke to us in English all the time, but my mom, she would speak to us in Tree and Ghana, so we understood the language. So being Ghanaian at home was one thing, right? One picture. But when I go outside to school and the world, I'm Black to everybody else, right? So,
and Black meaning for my listeners,
Black African American.
Yes, yes. So no, because our country is pretty much the only country that uses that describes different ethnic groups based on color. So everywhere else, people are just the country they come from. But here, we're white, Black, yellow, red. We're these different colors. So, when you say Black, just so for my listeners who may not get that, it means African American versus Ghanaian. We're all of African descent. Those who are Black in America, but Black in America means African American versus like your Ghanaian culture. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes. No, all good. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, so I'm African American to the outside world at school, and those other social settings. So they didn't really know that I was African, of African descent.
Right.
And so, how would I describe that? We're living in America, so I'm adopting American cultures as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And things of that nature. And kids are just mean, as you're growing
Yeah.
up, just kids are just mean. And I would get called a lot of things. I am very rich in tone. I have very dark skin.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
And thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have very dark skin. So even within my family, I think I'm one of the darkest people. It was a complex that I had for quite some time in my life, like most of my life until I would say, let's say within the last, let's say 10 years, right?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Always down on my skin color. Because I think when you, as a teenager, it's such a ripe age, those teenage years, you begin to internalize a lot of things that are said about you, oh, you're as black as midnight, or, oh, African booty scratcher, oh, blah, 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 so
Yeah.
ignorant things that people would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then the actions behind them, again, as a teenager, you want to have the boyfriend or someone, the guy, you want them to have notice of you. And like when nobody does, it's like, dang, well, what's wrong with me? What's the problem here? Images of beauty weren't necessarily of, the Black people who were out there were lighter skin, longer hair, different hair textures. So you start to internalize like, well, what's wrong with me? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, again, at home, my mom, she doesn't necessarily, she didn't overly say, oh, you're beautiful, or, you're this, you're that. It wasn't like that. It was kind of like understood. Like, look,
Mm-hmm.
you got to go to school, do this, it's like, it was like business.
Right.
So for me, trying to figure that out, I would make sure my hair was always done, my nails were done. I got the most latest clothes. She didn't buy any of that for me. I had to work for that. I mean, in 8th grade, I was selling candy at middle school. I had $20 bags of candy at Runners selling the candy so I can have money to go and have those things to, pump myself up or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
It's funny that you even asking me this question, because just recently, maybe within the last couple of months, I was looking at a photo that I had taken when I was in the 8th grade, I want to say 8th or 9th grade. And I was just looking at the picture and I was like, Joan, you are such a cute young lady. Like, what? It's amazing how society can make you feel so small and so ugly, or whatever it is. And you don't even see the beauty in yourself. Like, because just reflecting, looking at that picture, I was like, you're a very beautiful young woman. Like, and I remember feeling so low at that point.
It's interesting when you look back at yourself. Like when you look at pictures of yourself, I've had, for a variety of different reasons, but like just looking back at pictures of my young self and looking in my eyes, if you look in the eyes, it can really take you back to the moment the photo was snapped, everything that was going on, all the circumstances, what happened that day on the playground with your friend, what was going on between your parents, it can really take you. So I do understand exactly what you mean by, when you look back at yourself and then you're able to see yourself through your adult eyes, and you're like, what if I could just go back and give her a clue on a few things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Just positive affirmations and things like that. I think, I don't know, maybe it would have made a difference, maybe it wouldn't. I have no idea, but you're right. Like looking at myself in that time, was interesting. And then, growing up too, the moisturizers and things that we would use for our face, would have some bleaching cream in it. And I didn't know it at the time. I'm just using it, after you wash your face, you don't want your face to be dry. You put on the moisturizer. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized that there was bleach in them and my tone, was changing. Then once I realized it, though, I stopped because, and I don't know what made me say no more. But I was just like, well, this is crazy. This is what I thought in my head, like, I'm not using this anymore. And just let my natural tones come out however they are. And that's that.
Your own internal monitor.
Again,
that voice. Yeah. We have to, I believe, I'm not like, I don't know. I'm not an oracle or anything, but I believe that we have, we have our own internal monitor. We have our own connection to the source, to God, to, so there's a thing in you that you tapped into even at that early age that didn't feel right for you. I call it like your moment of spiritual awareness. I remember being a kid and acknowledging, I know it sounds so crazy, but maybe not to some, but acknowledging myself in myself. Like there was a moment that at a young age where I knew this is not, my flesh is not it.
Like an awakening.
Yes. Yeah. Like and I was really young. Like, I was a kid and I'm like, this is, and I would look at myself in the mirror and like see myself that, I would look at myself and like, oh, that's me. That's me.
You know what?
It's so weird.
I completely understand what you're saying because I have the same experiences. Even today, sometimes I'm like, am I in myself? It's weird to say that, but like,
no, I know.
Am I in myself?
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe it, but yes. Right. Who is this? Who am I looking at?
Who are you looking at? But my point was, so when you made that decision for yourself, it was your self, your true self, making a decision about what you felt was right for you. That's really deep. That's a very strong move as a young child to be able to acknowledge that.
Yeah, as a teenager even, and that in the time where I'm confused about why people don't, they don't like me per se, to say, no. So whatever that was, I thank God for it,
And to your point too, like when you're talking about being a kid and how mean children can be, it's interesting because I remember being in grade school and I had my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Marion Hubbard was my kindergarten teacher. I mean, she's passed on now, but she was hands down like one of those influential, phenomenal women in my life. And as we matriculated through school, she became like a resource teacher later on. And so she was responsible for our social studies segment. And this was around third, fourth grade, something like that. And so anyhow, we're in, doing our social studies unit. And we had these books, these archaic, crazy books. I mean, I don't think anybody would believe the stuff that we were learning back then. Like, so in the book, this is to this day, I'm, however many years old I am, I'm old. And I still remember this particular day and looking in this book. So in the book, there were 3 groups of people. Negroid, Mongoloid, and Caucasoid. Okay.
Wow, are you serious? Wow.
Not kidding. This is true. Like Negroid, Mongoloid, Caucasoid. So these are and they had images that were attached to who fell in these groups. So the Mongoloid people where, all the Asian people, Native American, like they had these different groups that fell under the Mongoloid group. Okay, the Mongoloid group they were cave people. That's what the picture looked like. It's like a guy in a animal thing, like a, and he had a bat, like remember Flintstones, like Bam Bam, like that. Looked like Bam Bam, like Bam Bam's big brother. That's what the Mongoloid person looked like.
Okay.
And the Negroid was was very primitive as well. Had a spear and like very. That's the best way to describe it. It was like a very primitive person. Okay. And the Caucasoid person was a nice little, white girl with 2 ponytails and ribbon, and she was sitting at a school desk.
Oh, she was a girl. That's interesting. Okay.
She was a sweet girl with a floral dress, yellow dress. I tell you, I remember this. Yellow dress with white flowers, and she was sitting at the desk with ribbon in her hair, and she said, and when our classroom, which was, I would say, I think we had one other person in there that may have been Latino, but mostly we were made up of African American children. So Mrs. Hubbard, who happened to also be a woman of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, she said, well, all of you are of African descent. The class erupted in protest. Really? I'm not no African booty scratcher. I'm not no. And it was so sad because I had the benefit of growing up in my household where that was taught. Like, as soon as you pop out of the womb, here's who you are. This is what we come from. This is our history. This is what you need to look at. Like that's how my father navigated that. So we had, and anyone who's from our generation might remember those ebony encyclopedias, like rows and rows. Ebony encyclopedia. Yes. So if you were ever bored, go get one of those ebony encyclopedias. Dang it. I'm not bored. I just remembered. Like I have all these other things I can do because no kid wants to sit around just reading my encyclopedia. But I had to. Like he would sit down there with me. We would go through them. And so anyway, by the time I got to this classroom and we were met with this book with the 3 groups, Mongoloid, Negroid, Caucasoid, and the pictures. And it wasn't so much that the groups were there that stood out. It was what the person that represented the group, the image that was attached, look, and the disparity between the Caucasoid girl and these cave people from the other group. No one wanted to be primitive. We all wanted to be evolved and be sitting at the desk, And so, I just remember getting that and then going home and sharing with my father, like, Daddy, look at this book. This is what they, my father being such a rebel. I said, look at this. This is what they said. He said, give me this old ignorant book. And he chucked it up into the, oh, wow. He chucked it up. We had like this storage area above the closet. He chucked it up there and wouldn't give it back. And he said, they ask you about it, just tell them I don't want you to read it. So
right? Okay. But imagine you said that you were in kindergarten and that is what the images that they're giving out there. So how impactful that is to someone else.
Yeah.
Father. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was a little older by the time I got the book, but the point is, I was still around 7 or 8.
Yeah, that's
young. Yeah. So to my point, so I guess the context here is that here you come into this environment of children who have been primed.
True.
Right? True. To think that, you don't want to be connected with that. That's not, but it's all a mind game, at least, back then. That's what it was.
Totally,
So,
totally was like conditioning you
yeah.
from a young age to believe one way. That's what I was saying when I'm looking at my pictures, old pictures today. I'm like, what in the world were people seeing?
Right.
Like this is it's so opposite. And of course today, and I'm glad times have changed in some of this. In the evolution of accepting people who are darker complected, as humans and as a source of not source of beauty, but another type of beauty. Where now I swear I'll go out and I'll hear it often. Your complexion is so beautiful.
Yeah.
You are so beautiful. Da, da, da. And I'm like, where were these guys? However many years ago, and
We didn't have the
I don't know.
Alec Wex and the beautiful Sudanese models that, we have now that are out here, like really representing, those darker complexions and beauty, and just being hands down,
and
just
hair as
beautiful.
well.
And hair,
Like,
and hair, because you've embarked upon a natural hair journy as well
I sure
along
have.
this.
Yes, you helped me do that. And there's one thing. I am my mother's child. I like change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I like to change.
Yeah.
I like to change my hair up and my looks up often. And I've never been ashamed of my natural hair. It was just more of okay, how can I make
learning
this
it
work? And
yes,
starting it, and then being in the workforce, and not wanting to offend anybody and thinking that, but then you realize, well, the hair is coming out of my own head.
That's right.
So
how can it be offensive?
Offensive to anybody? Like I can't change what's coming out of my scalp. Like this is it, So just being able to be confident today in that is it's a great thing for my psyche, for images of young people growing up. One thing I did want to share is, well, two things. One, as a child, I was, my middle name is Amaki. Okay. And Amaki is a Ghanaian name that means firstborn girl. And I forget which side of my family. I think it's my dad's side, on the Ashanti side. And I was always very, very ashamed when people would say, well, what's your full name? I would not want to say Amaki.
I can relate.
It leads to those questions. And I wasn't proud to be quote unquote African and, and all of that in this American world.
Yeah.
And so, but my mom, as a young child, my mom had fostered a young woman, my mom and dad, in New York. We used to live in New York. We were there for 10 years before we went to California. So in New York, this woman,
shout out to New York.
Shout out to New York. The Bronx, boogie down. There's an older woman that lived in our apartment complex, and she had a granddaughter. Miss Sadie was the grandmother. Nancy is the daughter. And she was older. But anyway, she would watch me, I guess, sometimes. And Miss Sadie ended up passing away, and my parents took on Nancy as their foster kid. Nancy was older than me. So, of course, I was attached to her hip. I was like 5 or 6, or whatever, growing up.
Big sister.
My big sis. Yes, to this day, she's still my big sis. So I was always at her hip and stuff, but she loved the Ghanaian culture. She would call me Amaki all the time, and I hated it. Like, it's like, stop calling me that, like I hated her calling. She would call me Amaki all the time. And it wasn't, again, until my evolution of self, growing up, and we all go through it, ever changing, that, now my quote unquote Facebook name is Amaki Williams, because now, I appreciate my African side, but there was a time I hated it. I hated it to no lie. And then the second point I wanted to share, and then we can go from there. My daughter, when she was about let's say 5, I think she was in kindergarten. You know how they have you draw pictures of your family and things like that. So she drew pictures of the family, and when she drew herself, she was very dark, right? She was dark like me. And I was like, oh, who's this? I said that to her. She's like, that's me, Mommy. I want to be just like you. And that, like, I was like, wow, somebody like loves me enough to be as dark as I am. It was like one of those mom moments that like I said, I still struggled with that. And for her to say that was just wow. And then a certain goddaughter of mine, I was told also, was like, appreciated my dark tones. And so it just made me realize, like, okay, Joan, like, this is, it's something that bothered me for a long time, but today I'm so glad that I am where I am and confident in my looks, and how I feel. Of course, my husband loves it, but you feel like, oh, they're supposed to say that, or they're supposed to say to people or whatever. But I had to come to the realization for myself to accept that in who I am.
Yeah. Thank you for being so vulnerable and open, with all of that. These are real issues that, we still are navigating right now, and you mentioned Sierra, your goddaughter, my daughter. Yeah, she is, Sierra has a beautiful dark complexion. And when she was really young, she's like, how can I get darker so I can be like Auntie Joan? Like she has her skin is so beautiful. And I was just so proud of that. I was so proud of the fact that she was proud of herself,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so proud of that. And, my own father is very dark. So, I never had any issue. Like, I thought it was amazing.
Right.
And interestingly, just we share this in common. As you were talking, and explaining your name and how we have that in common, Joan, because my father named me Saran Nataki, right? It's Swahili, and Saran means joy, like joy to the world, and Nataki means born of high birth. So isn't that interesting? Like Amaki and Nataki. Okay. So born of high birth, and my family calls me Taki for short. And so my entire family, my extended family, everyone, that's what they call me. And so when I would be out playing, or we would be out at the mall or anywhere, Taki, I'm like, oh my God. Okay, let me stop calling me that, and it's so, even with all the, positive affirmations and the, Black is beautiful speeches and the indoctrination of, African pride and, that was infused into my household and reality. The external influences still crept in to make me ashamed of my name. And so, like you, I have my name on my Facebook, like Taki. So, it's so interesting that, I didn't even, I would have never made that connection had we not had this conversation. So that is because I'm proud of it. And it wasn't until when I got to college and, I'd meet people and, there was a group of people that I met, and during my freshman year, and we just like it was my crew, real close, and they learned my name, right, and they're like, "Oh, Taki, that's what I'm calling you." In fact, I think it was Marcellus. Do you remember Marcellus?
Yeah, I do.
So so he's the one. He was when we were in the same. It was like our. How you come in, you have your freshman crew of people. So he was in my crew, and he's like, "Oh, that's dope. I'm calling you Taki." And then after that, it just kind of caught on, and everyone just kind of did it, and it was like, yeah,
right.
That's right. It's dope. Like I've been dope all this time, and I just didn't even realize how dope I was. Like, wow, I've been sleeping on how dope I am. Like Jesus, another feather in my cap to my dopeness. But yeah, so there's something else I wanted to, when you were talking about that. Yeah, just, I think that having the examples that we have today with respect to, um, various the spectrum of colors
Mhm.
that represent beauty. American
Mhm.
beauty standards have
Yes.
definitely changed, right? So we have evolved from one perspective of beauty, that's blonde hair, blue eyes, very thin, to now,
Mhm.
in addition to that, because I think all women are beautiful.
Of
In
course.
addition to that, we can be any size from there to the opposite end of the spectrum,
Mhm.
ranging from very light to very dark, from
Mhm.
straight to all various textures in between, ranging
Mhm.
up through curly to very tight curls, to, I mean, you name it, it's all beautiful.
Mhm.
Full lips, full
Mhm.
figures, hips.
Mhm.
I mean, it's all, yeah. So we have all of those different examples of beauty now. And I think it's just so amazing, that everyone gets to look at someone else and see themselves. Before you would look at American standards of beauty and not really see yourself, but now we're
Yes,
there.
just being
We're all there.
included.
Yeah.
Yes, you just want to be included to know that, I can be beautiful too.
hmm And the whole "My
Or I
Black is
am
Beautiful"
beautiful.
movement, right? That right there
Yes,
is just amazing.
yes,
So,
yes,
yeah, thank you
yes,
for
yes, yes.
sharing that. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Give everyone some insight. Some people may be surprised that it even exists, even if you're, you know, sometimes you can be part of a culture, but not really realize that certain things are happening around you if you're not impacted the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, my family, and I'm sure everyone's family, that's African American, we have a range of colors, in our families.
Mhm.
And my
Mhm.
experience might be very different from someone else in my family. They not really,
Yes,
they experience the upside of it. The
You
upside.
make an excellent point. Even in the Ghanaian community as well, in my own family, yes, we vary in hues for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, some experiences are different
Mm-hmm.
than others within it. But I think some people thought, well, I don't know, not thought, but think, at least I've been told this, that they never would think that I had a complex at all about it. So maybe whatever I give off, it doesn't show, or whatever it is. I mean, of course, I'm not gonna be walking around with my head down,
Yeah.
outside, going, woe is me. No, I'm not doing
So
that.
dark, Yeah.
Right.
It's just like, but no, it's because like you said, you adopted those characteristics from your mother, and your mother is certainly
Yeah.
not ashamed of herself. And so that is a wonderful gift. I know you described it as being vain, but I think it's deeper than vanity. Like, I think vanity is kind of our go-to descriptor, but I think
Hmm.
it's
She's confident.
it's
She's confident in who she
confident
is.
and proud. Like, this is, and you know what? Perfect. This is perfect point to make. I think that we're taught that if we exhibit self-love, and we are happy with ourselves or proud of ourselves or celebrate, how good we feel about ourselves, how we may look, how whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
that it's perceived as a negative thing. But
Mm-hmm.
you have to, like, it has
Yeah.
to start there. Like, why
Right.
is somebody else gonna love something you don't love? Like, it's like it's okay. Because shopping, perfect example. I love to shop, and so
Mm-hmm.
if I'm shopping, and I'm sure you've experienced, because you like to shop too. So I'm sure you've
Mm-hmm.
experienced this. Like, you're in the store, you pick up something, and then as soon as you pick it up, it becomes attractive to everyone around you, and you're like, and you weren't even
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it that tough. But once you picked it up and they started becoming attracted to you, like, I'm gonna hold on to this because let me think about this,
Right.
and
It's
so,
valuable.
so but so so it's the same thing with your self-image. Like,
It's true.
if you don't love it, who else is going to love it? So you have to love it. You have to love it. You have to celebrate it. You have to be confident, happy. And that's what you give off. That's why people are like,
yes.
what?
But you got to get to that point.
You have to
too,
get there. You do.
Right? You have
to believe your own hype.
That's right. You got to hype and you got to believe.
Yeah, you got to believe your own hype. Like, look, I'm the bomb. And then, but, you got to believe it, at the same time.
Yes.
So, wow. This concludes part 1 of a 2-part interview. Please tune in next week as I continue my discussion with Joan, and we continue our discussion on self-love and why she took a 9-month pause from social media. Thank you for tuning in to Power 365 Phenomenal Woman Wednesdays. I believe that every woman gifts the universe with her own strengths and unique characteristics. Simply because she is born, the universe benefits. Every woman is growing, learning, and evolving. On this channel, only positive seeds are sown, no matter how flawed the soil. Take care and have a phenomenal Wednesday. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. The Phenomenal Woman Wednesday podcast can be found on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube.